Welcome everybody to Eye of the Serpent Tarot for another pick a card reading. Today's reading we're looking at your psychic abilities and the sort of spiritual frameworks or abilities that they sit within. And so we're really going to look in depth about the sort of psychic talents you have, the ones that you may want to increase and how to do that, ones that you may feel aren't in your kit bag yet that you would like to think about increasing, getting spirit's advice about where the strongest energy is for you, the strongest payoff for your spiritual and psychic abilities are. I should say right at the beginning that I believe everybody is psychic. It's not even necessarily a matter of degree, it's just a matter of whether or not people have been exposed to and had sort of practice and learnt about it or noticed when things have happened. People might feel that they're not psychic, but if they think about it, they might have had a lot of coincidences in their lives that are more like synchronicities, for instance, which could be messages being sent to them from the universe and so forth. So, and some people may have been like me, brought up in a family where all these things were practiced and thought about and discussed, and others it may be so left of centre to their life that they don't even think about those abilities. And you know, really strong empaths, for instance, may just think, well, I really understand human nature, and they probably do, but there's probably also psychic ability. So the purpose of this reading is to try and untap that, and you don't have to be someone who works in a spiritual field or thinks of themselves as psychic to get something from this reading. We're going to be looking at things like the sort of psychic abilities and areas that you could use them. We're going to be looking at whether or not you would be primarily somebody who receives psychic information, or whether you're someone who projects it out and manifests and so forth, or some balance thereof. We'll have a bit of a sense with the tarot in particular about where some of the clair senses might be, clairsentient, claircognizant, all of those sorts of things. And then get spirit's advice about how to sort of increase those that you want to increase or bring into your kit bag, as I say, ones that you haven't really considered yet. So hopefully this will be fun, and hopefully it will be enlightening and give you a sense about the much greater capacity to connect with the universe than you possibly had given yourself credit for. I heard a very interesting theory once with a group of high magicians that were talking, and one was saying that there is a theory that when we think of our five senses that we have in the material world, sight, sound, touch, etc., that is not to give us all those things. It actually has a number of boundaries around them so that we don't see, touch, hear everything that's around us. So I think it's almost like dialing up those senses and channeling them in some way. So as I say, that's the theory behind this. So if you're curious about it and you've never really thought about it, or if you are someone who's already developed their psychic gifts and wants to think about how to develop them even further, hopefully this reading will have something for you. So as always, the important thing is to pick the right reading, and of course go to more than one if you want. There might be an amalgam of psychic abilities across the readings for you. I've used different tarot decks, or I'm going to use different tarot decks, I should say, in the readings to help with you choosing or aligning to the sort of energy and so forth, if that's the way that you choose. I'm using the High Priestess card from each of these decks for the visual for that, because it seems to me the High Priestess is probably the most distilled psychic spiritual avatar in the pack. You could argue the Magician as well, but for me the High Priestess is in the heart of the mysteries, and so that's what we really want to be looking at today. So for the different readings, so pile 1, we have the High Priestess card here from the Ancient Revival tarot deck. For pile 2, we have the Divine, which is in the Rainbow Moon tarot deck, which we'll be using for pile 2, is the High Priestess card. For pile 3, we have the High Priestess from the Dream Vision tarot pack. And for pile 4, we have the High Priestess from the Tarot Bot tarot pack. So hopefully one of these, or more than one, will draw to you. If you need to pause the video to contemplate it, by all means do that. That's using your psychic ability to connect in. And so obviously, if that works for you, do it. Whatever works for you, that's your own psychic intuition operating right from the outset. When you know what reading or readings you want to go to, the timestamps, as always, are in the description box below, and I'll see you there. Welcome, pile 1, to your reading. So these were some of the cards that were under the High Priestess tarot card that brought you to this reading. There's a few more here that we'll look at in this section of the reading before we move into tarot. So As I said, I'm going to be doing this reading in a particular way. So I will be looking at the classic meanings of tarot cards when I use them, such as the Dreams of Gaia tarot here and when we move to the Ancient Revival tarot deck. But I'm also looking at them in a very specific way, and I'm particularly focusing on that now, which is this first part of the reading is to get a sense of some of the abilities and whether or not, as I said in the introduction, you're someone who is internal receiving, like a kind of a radio receiver, so telepathy and all of that kind of connection, empathy, or whether you are someone who projects out, who manifests and so forth. And as I said in the introduction, you can be both, and you can develop one that is not your dominant thing, just like developing a muscle. You can build up a part of your body you haven't built up before. You can do the same thing with psychic energy. What this is telling me at the moment is because you have 2 minor arcana cards and 1 major arcana card here. With the major arcanas and with the court cards, I feel that would give a balance towards the external and the manifestation. With the minor, it's more like receiving, channeling, telepathy, that kind of thing. So, and the interesting thing to me is that the major arcana card you have is the journey card. It's sort of an additional card in the Dreams of Gaia deck. And so my sense is that the internal receipt of information, which comes to you both, I think, and we'll go more into this with the tarot, but probably with sort of clairsentience or claircognizance with an air card here, and through channeling and creativity in some way, sort of downloads and channels for something you do creatively, or that feels creative, even if you're not thinking of yourself as a creative person. It is actually with the purpose of creating a journey into the outside world. And one of the reasons I believe that is one of the cards around sort of gifts or areas that you might use your psychic abilities is the talk radio platform. Now, this doesn't mean you have to be on talk radio, but I think these cards in this deck to me always speak about someone who has a message, who has a story to tell, who has something to take into the broader world. So this feels like someone who picks up and channels creative energy. So I think that you do that, creative insights and so forth from your guides, from the universe and so forth, and puts them into a framework. It might be a story, it might be a narrative, it might be a belief structure that you take out into the world. And you are very articulate, you are able to take these concepts and put them in a very compelling way that people will listen to. You may be an indigo child. This particular card talks about the alpha generation born between 1958 and 1968. You don't have to be that. The indigo children in general were the concept of almost star seeds, children coming in to help with ascension. So all I would take from that, if you're not born in that period of time, is that some of this channeling and energy that comes into you is information to help yourself and others on a journey of ascension. And you are also very much, and I think this is kind of a bit through both, but particularly through the channel of the mind and through the crown chakra with astral projection, very able to do out-of-body experiences. So that's the interesting thing. That's the projecting out, but it is still around an internal experience. It's not, you don't seem to be at this point as focused on trying to manifest an outcome or something like that, or doing rituals or anything like that. We will see what else we have here. There might be more nuance to it, but it looks more like you are in searching for information, wisdom and so forth that you can then take out into the world. And you'd be highly telepathic. You would be able to do the astral projection. You would be probably very much able, I think, with also a fire sign here, to visualize things. And taking the classic sort of meaning of this, part of this is to help others deal with conflict, and part of it is to be recognized yourself and to have other people recognize who they are. So there's a kind of a conflict balancing teaching aspect to what you do as well. So you definitely have a message, and certainly Spirit might be saying, if you're not already taking it out in some way, it could be through a blog, it could be through writing, it could be through being on something like talk radio or YouTube or Instagram or something like that. That is a way to project out and balance this very internal getting a wisdom process that you have. So let's also look at what else. So we've got a couple of cards that are around magic abilities, and we've got a couple of cards around divination. So that's for me to balance again. The magic feels more in general around the manifestation side of things, and the divination more about the internal. So let's see what this has for you. So we have abundance and focus. So that's interesting. I'll get back to this in a minute. And then in terms of divination, we have dowsing rods And dictionary, okay. Well, there's definitely something about communication with you. Going to this, which is, as I say, this at the beginning, and we will see more with the tarot, because people are all a version of everything. It's just what is the most emphasised at the moment, pile one. But given this, it is saying that when you start to focus on what you taking your internal psychic ability process and what you receive out into the world, and I think this is what's important, you will bring abundance to yourself. So it's almost like it's a byproduct. What this is saying to me is that it's not so much necessarily that people coming to pile one sit and sort of like do affirmations and vision boards and try and bring an abundance in that way. It's more that it's a natural byproduct of you taking your internal focus out into the world in some way. So definitely Spirit is saying that part of developing your spiritual abilities and your psychic abilities, and particularly in terms of bringing outcomes to you, is to take your message out. This is why we've got dictionary here. This is why communication is important. When I see dictionary too, I think that there are various sorts of ways of doing divination. There's one called gematria, which is based on sort of numerical attributions to the Bible and to names and things like that. So it's sort of the Bible code. You certainly, if you're interested, can look that up and see how to do it on the internet. There's information about it. It's very, very complex, but it can be very, very interesting. You might be someone who finds some value in that. But if not, I think it is about the communication side of things. I think Spirit is very strongly saying here that you are receiving a great deal. The issue now is to take it out into the world. You are essentially, though, a seeker. This is what you will always be. That's why I'm saying that it's almost like the abundance comes as a byproduct. It's not what it's about for you. You want truth, you want spiritual balance and all of those things. And I think you'd be the sort of person who wanted abundance for everybody. This is partly why you want to take the message out. It's not sitting there saying, how can I have $1 million sit in my bank account? Not that there's anything wrong with that, and maybe you will one day, but it is as a result of you taking this information that's being channeled to you out into the world in some way. Okay, so I think Spirit has a bit of a mission for you, in other words. So let's have a look at what Tarot can tell us. So I'm firstly going to look at a deeper profile of your psychic energy. So I'm going to be looking at the suits in particular, and then also, anything around the majors or court cards that come up. Though the suits with the courts, I'm probably going to look at those in the terms of what that tells me. And so I think different suits will tell me different types of psychic ability and approach that are particularly strong for you, and we'll also look to see if anything is missing. We already know on a base level that the sort of fire energy of creativity and that kind of side of things, and the air energy of sort of telepathy, claircognizance, that kind of thing is there already, but we'll just see what else Spirit wants to tell us about that, and we will also look at the classic meaning of the tarot cards as well. So okay, so this is definitely actually firstly picking up the message that is in here. And Spirit is saying, because we have so many major arcana cards, and remember I'm seeing major arcana cards as being an external thing, that there's only, of all the major arcana here, there's only one, which is the balance card of temperance, that is the right way up. And then we have the wands card, which is around the creative energy. So I think Spirit is definitely saying here that part of your development of your spiritual gifts, because they are significant with all these major cards, is thinking about how you take it out into the world. This is a very strong nudge from the universe that you are not meant to be a monk sitting on the top of a mountain contemplating your navel and the grandeur of the universe. You are meant to be taking something out into the world, because in not doing it at the moment, you're actually letting kind of your pragmatics about, well, how will this be received, dim your sun, dim the energy of your creativity, and you sort of sit in a non-choice. It's like you receive all the information, but you're not doing what you could do with it, with the death card reversed. It is possible too, I think, that you could be a medium, but you might be suppressing that. With the death card in the context of this sort of reading, I feel like that is telling us something about mediumship, connection with ancestors, that sort of thing. But the fact that it's reversed, it might be something that you find disturbing. But pay attention to whether or not you just have strange things happen in your house. You hear noises that you can't account for. And I'm not saying this in anything scary. I don't feel that any of this is scary. This is more around energies and spirits that may be trying to communicate with you. But it looks as though at the moment you have that ability, but you're not taking it out into the world. It's definitely, with the wands here, tilting towards this creative channeling side of things. So I feel that is your major receiver. You receive things. You probably receive a lot of energy by listening to music, reading books and all of that sort of thing. There's something around the receipt of information, but you will channel and you will probably do anything creative very, very quickly. But again, it's interesting. It's the 5 of Wands here and then it's the 5 of Air. There's something about your spiritual gifts and your psychic gifts that are about, as I said, resolving conflict. I think this is why Spirit is saying that, partly it's a conflict within yourself. About you actually look like someone who has these abilities but is sort of ambivalent about them in a way. It's like maybe you receive too much, maybe it's overwhelming sometimes, and maybe you don't see how to change it into abundance or do anything with it. But Spirit is definitely saying, with the Fool reversed, there is a pragmatic way to do it, and I feel like it's around the communication mediums that you could use. And what you do need to do is bring things into balance, because at the moment it's like you're receiving all this information and it's just sort of, it's then staying stuck. You do actually need to get that message out. And the more that you do that, the more I'm getting you will receive. It's sort of like that's part of the abundance as well too. Your psychic ability, the more that you communicate what you are seeing, the more it's going to come to you. Spirit will see that and will cheer you on and so forth. But it's definitely saying get it out into the world. It's definitely saying there's something about spiritual mediumship, that kind of thing with you, but very, very creative energy around what you do. I would say with the 5 of Wands that it is primarily things like channeling. It is probably to some degree, there's a bit of sort of kinesthetic sort of senses, the sort of clairs where you might feel it in your body, but it feels like heat or electricity or extra information in some way coming in. And you're likely to find, particularly if you do astral projection or lucid dreaming or anything like that, that you feel quite exhausted after it. And this, I think, is partly also the reversed cards here, the major arcana, that there is a kind of exhaustion that comes from it. And it's almost like open the release valve, let it out, communicate it to the world in some way. Okay, so I think Spirit's already starting to tell you what you need to do with this, because I think they're very keen on you actually taking your message and your information out there. But let's ask for just some basic information about how to increase your ability. Actually, the one other thing I should say is that the other part of intent of this, and I've sort of got carried away with the rest of it, is that number of majors does suggest to me that you are very well developed, but you suppress quite a bit of what you do. There is many people, I think, who are going to come here, are going to think, I don't know if I have those abilities. I don't know. Maybe I've just got a good imagination. Maybe I've just got a quick mind. No, you actually have more than that, pile one. Okay, so let's have a look at how to increase the ability for you. Okay. So Spirit is saying, it's interesting that we now actually have quite a lot of cups and we haven't seen this yet. So part of the balance is actually reconnecting to your heart and connecting to those parts of your ability, the empathy and so forth, that reach out. So I think at the moment you receive a lot in terms of from your spirit team and telepathy and so forth, and it's almost unconscious. You haven't actually really thought about how you connect. This is saying part of it is to consciously start to think about empathy, using those sort of skills. Think about the feelings, understand the feelings of other people and so forth. You will need to cleanse out some of that energy as you do it, because the 8 of Cups suggests you will, because you're such a good receiver, you're going to pick up a lot. But there's something in that, and there's something in an ambivalence that you had around what you loved and cared about, maybe when you were very young, or even around this sort of thing. You might have come from a family that didn't approve of this, for instance, and so there's some processing of that energy that's necessary, releasing that energy so that you can then commit to what you're going to develop. And I think it's in a business level. There is a business level for you to connect to and bring this into being. And And at the moment, you have a certain degree of ambivalence about it. It's like you keep putting your toe in the water, pole one, and then you sort of pull it out and think, oh, maybe not now. But you really, really do have something that's worth taking out there. And it's the thing that ultimately will bring the abundance. So what Spirit is saying is that you don't have to worry about getting the information. You get it really easily. You're open as a receiver. It's how you then translate that into the outer world. And part of that is reconnecting to what matters to your heart and empathy. Like, what do people need to know? I think that's what I'm getting here, because you have so much information coming through you and you understand the journey of life so well and the psychology of life so well that there's a sort of thing about understanding what does your audience need and what could you commit to give that audience and help them through. That seems to be the thing. You are meant to have an audience, definitely. The other thing I would say too, and I meant to say at the beginning, is that there is a kind of a logic to the tarot packs here. So this may or may not resonate for you. If you didn't choose because of the tarot image, then this may not resonate, or it might anyway. But for this pack, I definitely feel there is a very strong connection to past lives, because the imagery is very much sort of past periods of history. So I feel like your understanding of history, it's two levels. One is that I think that you would have a strong connection to your past lives and memory of your past lives if you want to explore that. The other thing that I would say, and this fits maybe with the journey and taking the information you're channeling out, is that when people talk about seers or prophets, in many ways what you're talking about is a very strong understanding of the past and the patterns of the past, so that you can actually see what is likely to happen in the future. So I think that there is a precognitive, prophetic side to you as well, just because of the fact that you chose to come to this reading. And then particularly when we're looking at the channeled information that is coming and the sense of a long journey that you've been on. Okay, so improving it is really about bringing it back to your heart and thinking about how to turn it into a business, because you've basically got what you need. And that's why I'm saying it's like the abundance comes anyway. Once you start doing it, it's like that you don't have to spend a lot of time, if you haven't already done it, worrying about how you do sort of manifestation spells or whatever. You don't need to do that. You're kind of beyond it, to be honest. You don't really need to do that. Okay, so let's get some other information from Spirit around things that can help you. So we're going to start with some astrology, then we'll have a look at chakra energy, how to sort of balance or use that. And then we're going to finish with a couple of more mystical decks for just final information for you about your psychic ability. Pile 1. Okay, Trine, we'll have a look at the planets for that. 8th house, that doesn't surprise me. You are definitely a medium. If you don't realize that yet, you're definitely a medium. It's your choice, of course, whether you do anything with it. And Taurus, I think, is about getting things into the material. You may be with this sort of like air energy and fire energy a little bit off with the pixies sometimes. And I say that with the greatest of respect. It's like grounding it and bringing it into the material world will help you to some degree. You're getting it because there's so much information coming through to you, and you're such an open channel to sort of like spirits, ancestors, higher order beings and so forth with the 8th house. You may be Scorpio too, or have Pluto very strongly in your chart, but there's definitely a sense of sort of mediumship around you. So let's have a look. Trine is an aspect of ease. So this is what I'm saying. This is easy for you. But let's have a look at what particular planets are being activated around your spiritual ability, part 1. Bear with me while I deal out till I get cards. So Sun, yes, this is part of who you are. This is why it's important to turn the Sun around, in fact, to own who this is in you rather than kind of like suppressing it. Sun and Saturn, yes, because you do suppress it a bit. So Saturn is a limiting planet sometimes, but it's also a structured planet. So when you use it the way that you at its best, it brings structure and form into things. It can in this. Using it at its best, it will bring form into what you're doing. It won't just be something you experience internally. But with Saturn and Sun trine, there is the capacity for doubt and for limitations to get in the way of your life path, because it's a little bit too easy for Saturn to kind of boss around the Sun in a way. But if the Sun remembers it's the life path, it's what you need to do, then it can actually say, Saturn, you know what? I'm only going to listen to you if it helps me bring things into being. I'm actually going to move forward with my life path. So I think that's the sort of energy. I think there's just a kind of a doubt in you. I think many of you that have come here have had a lot downloaded to you, but you're not really sure, is it even real? Like, is it right? Yes, it is, but you actually have to start to own it and think about how to present it to the world. Okay, so let's see around chakra energy. So we're just going to pull a couple of crystal chakra cards for a sense about the sort of chakras that are particularly being activated by your psychic and spiritual abilities, and then whatever affirmations are associated with that for you. So we have heart chakra. This is, getting back in touch with what matters to you emotionally. And the third eye chakra. I would have been really surprised if I didn't get a third eye or a crown chakra with you, because there's very, very high degrees of telepathy and so forth. But the heart is about the empathy. It's connecting the telepathy to the empathy that is the key for you. So the heart chakra here has Moldavite, which is about healing and evolution. The affirmations are, I am constantly evolving spiritually, and I understand that healing takes time. So some of you may, as I said, there may have been something in your childhood or more recently, something in the past that actually suppressed some of how you felt about this and so forth, and emotional issues that you needed to let go of. Because you're such a receiver, in fact, you may have taken on the emotions of people, your family, friends, your lovers or whatever, and it may be that that's been hard on you. That's maybe why you need to kind of ground and earth it to some degree so that you can take this forward. Then with the third eye chakra, we have blue aragonite, and that's about calmness and relaxation. The affirmations are, I take time for self-care and relaxation, and I remain calm in times of stress. I think that's coming up because there is so much that comes into you. You're such an open receiver. I do get the sense, though, what I'm being told is that if you start to take the message out and you start to it's like opening the circuitry. It's like everything's coming in and it's almost like it gets jammed and it overheats. If you open the circuitry and take the thing out, you're going to balance that better. And in doing that, you'll be more calm with all of this. Okay, so lastly, we're going to pull a card from the Mystical Journey deck, and then we're also going to pull a card from the Secret Language of Light. So these are two last pieces of information for you from Spirit about developing your psychic and spiritual abilities. Pile one. We've got afterlife. See, it's saying it over and over. If you don't realise that you're a medium, definitely. I also think with the afterlife, there is a sense here, there's a couple of things. Firstly, there's a sense that the spiritual beings around you, that's why I'm saying don't be frightened of them. This card talks about spiritual beings coming to tell you that the time in between life is actually glorious and nothing to be afraid of, and that we continue to move on. So there's something like that in the messaging for you. And I also think it's picking up the astral travel. I think that you may astral travel to the dimensions that are in between life sometimes. Maybe even sort of astral travel and connect to the Akashic records, actually, I'm getting. All right, and so last but not least, we'll just draw a card from the Secret Language of Light to close out the reading with a message from the light realms for you. Okay, divine animals. Some of your medium ability may be connecting to animals that you've had in the past, pets that you've had in the past. Otherwise, the animal totems are going to be very strong for you and may help you connect to the heart with the heart thing there. So it may be that if you have been hurt by personal relationships, and this is part of your sense of reluctance about reaching out, maybe sort of start with thinking about animal guides, animal totems, having a pet. Like, it helps you reconnect to your heart on some level. Certainly that energy is with you and it is very powerful. I'm also getting Leo, seeing the lion there. So it may be that a Leo, you may have Leo strong in your chart, or it may be that people with sort of Leonian energy connect to you and can help you get back to your heart in some way. Okay, so pile one, you're already very developed, but I just think that it is about balance. It is about the Temperance card, and it is about taking your message out, that you're getting all this from mediumship and from channeling and from telepathy and astral travel and all those sort of things, but you're meant to take it out in the world. That will then balance and bring you abundance and the other side of it. But as I say, almost as a side effect of just clearing the channels and letting them go through and doing what your life purpose is. So I hope that resonates for you. I hope you enjoyed the reading. If so, please like the video and subscribe. And if you care to share about it, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. Otherwise, I hope to see you in future readings. Welcome, Pile 2, to your reading. So these cards firstly are to give me a bit of a sense about the type of psychic and spiritual gifts that you have and how they're manifesting the balance and so forth, and some of the sort of mediums that they may come through. We've got some more cards here that were also under the tarot card that we'll look at before we get to the tarot. But in this part of it, the first thing, looking at the Dreams of Gaia tarot, there was an intention to look at whether or not something seemed to be more internal or external. And what I mean by that is internal is where you receive information, channeling, telepathy, all of those kinds of things, and that is an internal spiritual psychic process. External is more where you project it out. So you would be the sort of person, if you had a strong external focus, that people would be able to read, that you would be able to manifest, would be able to bring things into being. So it's almost like the person who's the psychic who channels information and prophecy, and then the person who's more like a magician who brings abundance in and law of manifestation, that sort of thing. Now, it doesn't mean if you're more one than the other that you can't do the other. It's just like a muscle. It's like, do you develop one more than the other? Do you decide to try and balance it out and so forth? And we'll see more about that when we get to the specific tarot part of it, about what Spirit's advice is there. But for you, you are very much an internal person. You are a receiver. You are very much an open channel. And there is almost a process to it. There are 3 different ways that you receive information, and it's almost like you then sort of like toss it to the other way. So the one thing that we're not seeing at the moment is water. So we're not seeing this. You're internal because these are all minor arcana cards. So basically that is around that. Though the scribe, because it is in fact a court card here, there is, oh no, it's not, sorry. No, it is a court card. I get a bit confused with Dreams of Gaia sometimes. There is some external manifestation to this, and that is with the scribe card, a sense of presenting the information to others in some way. But it is primarily with 2 minor arcana cards there, and this is still part of the minor arcana rather than the major arcana you receive. So you receive through creative channeling, through sort of images and so forth, claircognizance, I think. No, clairvoyance, sorry. So they're seeing things. Then you also receive it as sort of concepts, thoughts, words, and you also feel it in your body. I think that you would be someone who has most of the clair senses, at least to some degree, developed. But the one at the moment that we're not seeing, and it will be interesting to see when it comes up, is anything to do with the feelings, so the more kinesthetic side of receiving information, the empath. Doesn't mean that you're not empathic, it just means that that may not be the primary way that you are receiving information. And as I say, you are primarily receiving it, though with a little bit of a tilt towards presenting that information out there. What does really interest me is that there's earth and air here, and then here in the ascension paths that we're seeing, we have earth and air again. So earth is about bringing things into being. So part of what you do with your spiritual and psychic gifts is manifest them somehow in the world. So even though you're internal and you're not necessarily, as I say, that kind of magic end of it, you're more the receiving end, you still have a capacity to take things, ground them, and make them real in the material world. You look at spiritual information and it will be very grounded. The way you communicate it will be very grounded, in fact. With the air ascension path 3, this is about bringing in that kind of energy into the ascension path, so bringing it into a proper sort of set of steps and so forth. So you would come across to people in terms of your spiritual and psychic gifts as being very grounded, very logical. And some people may mistake what you get for just a really sharp mind that understands the consequences of things and can see the practical application of things. You may even do that. If you don't see yourself as psychic, you may think what's happening is that you get an idea, you work it out logically, and then you bring it into being. Well, isn't that life? But this is actually your psychic abilities working at a very high level. The other thing with the Akashic records is that you're very connected. I think in actual fact, the feeling I get most from this is, again, because the empathy end of it is not there, the water end is not there. I think you're very, very connected to higher energy beings, very connected to the divine realms, the Akashic records, the karmic cycle, all of those sorts of things. In fact, you may well have been something like a high magician in another life, to be honest, because it feels like you're not necessarily doing those sort of things now. It's an internal sort of process, but you really do have a connection to that with the Akashic Records, with what the consequences of life is, with the flow of life and the patterns of life and so forth. So I feel like you get most of your psychic input from those realms rather than through telepathy and people around you. I mean, with the air there, we'll see what else we have with the cards, can mean things like telepathy, but for you, I feel it's very ascension oriented. It's a macro level thing. It's about your ascension, the ascension of others, and about grounding at the same time as ascending, like getting that balance right. So I think most of your psychic energy comes from, as I say, the higher levels rather than from those around you. But let's see what else we have. So we have 2 cards from a deck which to me really represent things like the sort of high magician, the sort of magical side of things, and then 2 that are more about the divination, the receiving, the prophecy side of things. So let's see what other information Spirit wants to tell us about you. So we have Sacred Heart and Activation. Okay, and then on this side we have Ouija board and Astrology. Okay. So in terms, as I say, because I'm not seeing a very strong energy about trying to sort of manifest or whatever, I feel that with the Sacred Heart, it's because to you that is too sacred. But there is a certain degree of activating and understanding why that is. It's almost like remembering it with the Akashic Records. This is why I felt that you've done this before. It's not necessarily what you're here to do this time, but you've done it before. And it's very, very precious to you. You would only want to activate something that was pure of heart, something that will help others. So you're certainly not going to be someone who sits and does manifestation work just to get rich. That's not who you are. You are likely with this to be able to bring in and ground and make money from this sort of work if you want, or to use those sort of skills in whatever kind of work you might do. But it really does, for you, have to activate at a very high level. And I think it is also confirming my impression that your spiritual channeling comes from a very high level. And because of that, that's why we've got Ouija board, I think, because there's a caution around that. Ouija boards are, of course, for seances and so forth. So you may very well have some mediumship, but it is saying be careful where the source of the information is. And so I think that one of the things that Spirit wants you to think about is reopening that sense of the sacred to make sure the information that you receive is coming from a good source. So I think there is a little bit of a warning here for you that some of this could come from sources that are not as benign. So it's not saying that you need to be scared or anything. It's just saying you have the capacity to assess this, so assess it. You have the capacity to go back to the sacred, and certainly do things like sort of prayers and so forth, whatever works for you to give boundaries around yourself. The other thing that can help you is astrology. So you may be an astrologer, or it might be worth getting your chart done if you haven't already done so, because I think it would also help you understand where you're meant to put this energy. So again, so you're not waylaid. And the thing about Ouija boards and seances and so forth is that, yes, there's all the sort of stuff that people talk about, with, movies like The Exorcist and so forth. And certainly, if you don't protect yourself, dark energy can come in. What often comes in, though, through those sort of things is just mischievous, just silly, mischievous stuff that kind of like throws you for a bit of a loop or whatever, or can have you running in circles. This is where I think astrology could help you. If you did feel you were channeling stuff and you weren't sure whether it was always on the up and up in a way, or whether it just seems silly, astrology could help you ground that energy and understand it. And you are very much about grounding the spiritual. Okay, so let's use the tarot. So the tarot, I'm going to firstly be looking at it on 2 levels, a bit like with this. One is about what the actual cards are saying, but I'm first of all going to focus on the balance of the suits primarily, and where there are major cards or whatever, the sort of level of development, etc., that we're looking at. And then I'll look at the actual meaning of the cards as a narrative for you. So the first thing we really want is just a little bit more detail about your psychic abilities and spiritual gifts. Okay. So the interesting thing about this for me, because we're not seeing majors there, and yet I feel like you're very developed. I think what it is saying, firstly, is that there was something that you did very differently in past lives. This is why the Akashic Records has come up. It's almost as though you kind of completed a cycle spiritually, psychically. I think around the manifestation, the magician, all that kind of thing, or the high-level mystic in one of the major religions or something like that. You did something. And now it's almost like you're sort of starting with a renewed vigor to look at it, more as a sort of internal process and more as a kind of telepathy and so forth. Because there's a lot of wands energy here for a start. So that certainly is picking up this. This is the creative side. This is the sort of artistic side. This is the visionary side. This is the clairvoyance, as I say, that kind of side of things very, very strongly. And then in fact, there's 4 wands cards there. And then we have the 8 of Cups reversed. Now, this interests me because this is the card, or this is the suit that is about empathy, the empath, the healer, and all that kind of thing. Now, you would have some healing ability with the grounded energy, but it's like you suppress that. What I'm getting is that something in this past life, when you develop these other skills, had an emotional cost. And so whether it was that you didn't have a love because you stayed in a sacred sort of monastic sort of lifestyle, for instance, or whether you had to pay emotionally in some way and love in some way around what you developed, there's something there. And Spirit is saying that it is time to let go of some of that, because you do need to let some of that energy in. At the moment, you sit very much in the creative space. And part of that, I think, is telling us that is where you feel comfortable because it's new and it's exciting and it's like a phoenix rising. There's that sort of energy around you. So there's something in a past life that you are processing. But Spirit is saying that there are patterns still to let go and to connect into that, because maybe empathy is important. One of the things that's interesting to me about the way these cards have come out, Pile 2, is that there was a kind of an intent or a logic to the different decks that I used. And I feel as though this deck is very much in the water space. It's very much in the diversity, empathy, caring sort of space, just because of the way that it's designed, the sort of figures that it uses and all of that sort of thing. So I think that there is a bit of a call. There's a call in your heart to get to that, and an understanding the fact that you actually came here. I think you know that you need to reconnect to that and heal that in some way to really release what you have. Because it's also interesting that, you've got a couple of the sort of court cards, so that's sort of picking up some of the development around this. Both are reversed, so you're kind of holding back some of your energy, and you're not sure you have a great deal of charisma if you wanted to take your message out, but it's like you sort of feel like, what's the cost of doing that? And do you yet know exactly what you want to tell to the world? Because you want harmony with the 4 of Wands. You want harmony, you want to work with people, you want to be close to people. I think you got too powerful, to be honest. I think there was something, and that's no judgment. I just feel that you got really, really powerful with your psychic ability before, and it cost you something. It cost you some degree of harmony or happiness or love, or you got too high a position and it detached you from others, or you were very monastic, as I say. This lifetime, you want passion in your life, you want connection in your life, but it is saying you do need to reconnect to your heart to do that. It's the muscle you're not using. You're using this sort of pragmatic approach and this creative approach with your psychic ability. Okay, so let's ask for a little bit more detail around what Spirit would suggest for you to sort of get that balance for you, and to sort of build back a muscle that I think that you used in past lives with your psychic ability, Pile 2. Okay. Some of this is about love. It's about a relationship or relationships in general. So Spirit is saying that's the key to unlock everything. It's the key to unlock the manifestation. It's the key to unlock what you want to tell the world. And it's the key to ground things. It is important to reconnect with relationship and to find those who are like you. I think that you will find other people who are highly creative. This is how this operates, or very much those who sort of visualize, who see things, who in a meditation see things very strongly. There are connections. They could be love connections or they could be friendships, but it will help you with that. It helps you reconnect your heart. In fact, I'm getting that for many of you. If the same sort of pattern has occurred in this life, and it could have, you might have felt disappointed in love, you might have felt you couldn't find that soul connection and so forth, that seemed to be for others for some reason. There is the possibility of finding that, but it's finding it in people who have a similar way of channeling information. So it's almost like sitting in a meditation circle with people and finding people who see similar things to you. And it may start with friendships, and the friendships may then lead you to other people. So it's that kind of thing. It certainly is about a different perspective, and it's partly because this is a major arcana card, taking that different perspective out into the world and not procrastinating on it. I think Spirit is saying that because you haven't sort of fix this issue, you procrastinate on what you could take out. So don't do that. Don't delay it for yourself. Take a different perspective, but find your tribe in a way. That helps release you, because you really have, for some reason, put a halt on yourself, and you've lost a little bit of faith in what you can do. And I just feel that it's in a past life. I feel that in a past life, this ability cost you something. And I think as a result of that, there's a kind of a internal inhibition. So you can bring in the information, but taking it out and making the connections is hard for you to do. I'm getting that for some of you, you sort of think, oh, I shouldn't do that. I shouldn't do that with this. This should be just spiritual. This should be sacred. But there is actually connection that's meant to happen here, and grounding, and you can help other people. Okay, so let's see what other advice Spirit can give. So we're looking at, firstly, at some astrology, and that will be particularly important for you, given the astrology there. Astrology sort of energies that can help you. Then we're going to look at chakras, and then we'll sort of finish up with a couple of sort of more mystical decks for final messages for you, pile 2. Okay, we've got Mars, mutable, Leo. Yeah, see, you're very fiery. And I think Spirit is saying that's fine. There's nothing wrong with you. You're meant to be creative. You're meant to be seen. You're meant to be out in the world. I think you did this one time before, but possibly, as I say, more in that kind of manifestation, powers of the universe type of way. And so you're a little bit reluctant about that, but you're meant to actually reignite your ambition. There's something about your ambition that you've kept on hold. So Spirit is say, let that go, come out. Mars, the tarot card with it is the Tower. So there's a major sort of change, a major shift. And I think it is around connecting your passion to your heart. With mutable signs, that shows the flexibility that's necessary and the transformation that's necessary, the energy of the Hanged card here. The mutable signs are Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius and Pisces, so you may have that strongly in your chart as well too. I'm feeling particularly drawn to Pisces and Virgo for you. So Virgo may be for your grounding ability and just, a psychic sort of energy around it in terms of bringing that into the manifest. But Pisces for this sort of more high level, high order channeling as well. So I suspect that many of you might have those signs fairly strongly in your chart. Okay, so let's see what chakras need to be activated or are being activated at the moment with your psychic gifts. Throat chakra, yeah, you're meant to tell something, you're meant to talk. Throat chakra, yes, you're definitely meant to talk. You're not meant to hide this away, and for some reason you are. So Spirit is definitely saying talk about it. And I think it's also talking about it, being in groups, bringing that together, finding other people like yourself. In the throat chakra at the moment, we have aquamarine, which is about sensitivity and closure. The affirmations are, I create my own closure. So yes, there's something from the past, but I think it's a past life. Unless there is something really early in your life that you can relate to and that you're involved in some of these sort of things and it went wrong, then this is about recalibrating it and closing that energy out. This also says, I honor my sensitivity. Yeah, you are. There is a sensitivity to you, but you've kind of channeled it through creativity and manifestation and all that sort of thing. You're not necessarily connecting to your sacred heart, which is very important to you. That's why you're protecting it. We have Celestite as well, divinity and wisdom. I am wise beyond my years, and that's true. And there's, as I say, very connected to the higher realms. And I see divinity in all things. That's right, because that's where your information's coming from. So you really do see that, and you've really done that. You're not new to this, but there's something new that you're doing this time around, and you're a little bit gun shy about the consequences or the costs of it. Okay, so to help you to finish off, firstly, we're going to draw a card from the Mystical Journey deck, and then we'll also close off with the light realms with the secret language of light. So firstly, mystical journeys for you, pile 2. Self-realization. You see, this is the thing. There is something about you psychically that you're not fully allowing yourself to see. Once you can see that, and you see how high you climb on the realms, because you do, then you'll understand that you have very high order spirit guides around you, all of that sort of thing. You're not going to make the same mistake again. And there is no punishment for making the mistake. And it may not even have been a mistake. It just might have been something that made you feel detached from other people. But this self-realization and knowing who you are, and then being able to communicate out that really, really opens up your gifts even more. So let's ask lastly for a card from the secret language of light, for light energy, to close out the reading for you, pile 2. Colour. Okay. There's something about creativity. Some of you might be painters, you might work with fashion. There's something about colour with you, and certainly colour energy, auras. I'm also getting auras. You probably see auras, or you'll be able to develop the capacity to see auras. And I'm getting that for some of you, that's the way to reconnect to the heart. It's almost like that's why we're getting all this wands energy, the colour. I think this is a final clue for you, that seeing and developing a skill to see auras starts at empathy. It opens back up that channel around your empathy, your heart, and so forth, but in a way that also protects you, because seeing aura energy helps you see where it's a good energy or a not so good energy for you. So pile 2, I hope that resonates for you. I hope it was helpful. I hope you enjoyed the reading. If so, please like the video and subscribe if you haven't already done so. And if you have any comments, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. Otherwise, I hope to see you in future readings. Welcome, pile 3, to your reading. So these cards, plus a few more that we'll use before we get to the tarot part of the reading, are meant to give a sense of some of your sort of strongest psychic gifts and so forth at this point, and to what degree they are internal, receiving, telepathy, all of that kind of thing, and to what degree they are external in terms of manifestation, projecting energy out, and so forth. So because there's 2 different sort of pathways in a way for psychic ability. And we are looking at the Dreams of Gaia tarot to start with, to get a bit of a sense of what that balance is, and then some more information here around some of the ways it manifests. How I'm reading the Dreams of Gaia tarot is that I'm looking at, if there were major arcana cards or court cards, I would be seeing that mainly as an external push. It's like the manifestation, it's the spell work, it's the pushing the energy out. When it is minor arcana cards, it's about the receiving, the channeling, the telepathy, and so forth. And you are very much in the space of the latter. So it doesn't mean that you couldn't do the other. It just means at the moment this is where the skills are developed and where you tend to default to as a natural psychic thing. And it's interesting because you're a combination of clairvoyance, clear seeing, clear thinking, I think clairsentience as well, but certainly clairvoyance here. You see things, you visualize things, and we've got meditation teachers, so you may very much see that in meditation. You may be highly visual in meditation. You may even teach other people how to do this sort of thing. So you get a lot of psychic downloads and so forth through meditation, through visualization, and I think also through words, through ideas that come into your mind, like clairsentience and so forth, with an air card there. But you also are very kinesthetic. With 2 earth cards, you feel things in your body. So you would be the sort of person who would have that very strong gut instinct, and that is actually picking up the information. It's being able to read a room, it's being able to read the environment that you're in. You're very, very strongly on that. So you are seeing what is around you, you are putting it into thought, you're understanding it, and then you're also feeling it. And I actually think, because there are 2 earth cards here, that you feel it first in your body. and then it's like it becomes a sort of a combination of an idea and a visual. It's sort of, a friend of mine talked about that, you know, she talks about how she will see how she feels, and in a way that's kind of the thing, but it's almost in reverse. It's like I will feel how I see, right? Or my feelings come in first and then I will see, but there's a kind of a balance between the two of those things. So it's primarily around what you feel physically, and to some degree what you see and think. So as I say, clairvoyance, clairsentience, and all the sort of clairs that are around the body and so forth. What we're not seeing there is the sort of empathy cards of you know, water, and we're not seeing the creative channeling, sort of very fast channeling of fire. It doesn't mean that isn't there. It may come up with these or with the tarot. We'll see as we go along. And as I said at the beginning, we all have all of them. It's just a matter of about which taps are turned on. But these are your default and so forth. As I say, you could very well use this clairvoyance and clairsentience, and even, as I say, all the sort of more kinesthetic clairs as part of a meditation practice or teaching others. You're definitely meant to be a peacemaker, though, with Life Path 9. So I feel as though a lot of this is sort of like, I think probably telepathy, you know, prediction ability and so forth, is brought into bringing things into balance in the material world. That's how you use this ability. And if you didn't think of yourself as psychic, if you think about it, you're probably someone who does bring peace to situations, grounds other people. You have the insight, the flash of understanding and so forth of the scenarios that you're in, of the environment that you're in. As I say, you read a room very, very well, and you can bring that into being and so forth. So, and you can give it structure with the Four of Pentacles and give it growth with the Seven of Pentacles. So there's a sense of longer term outcomes. You use this in some way, and that way, even if you're not thinking of it as psychic. Okay, so we're also going to look with some other oracle cards that were under the tarot card that brought you here. So there's two that are what I would say more in that external ritual magic, projecting, creative sort of side of things. And then there's two that are around divinatory, internal, clairvoyance, claircognizant, that side of things. So just to see a little bit more about the balance for you. So we have respect and daemon. Oh, that's interesting. And we have phrenology and arrow. Okay. So certainly around the sort of more magic side of things, you have a very strong spirit guide and very strong higher self with the daemon or demon there. So it's not about anything demonic. It's about a higher self and a connection. It can sometimes also indicate things like a divine counterpart or something along those lines. So it'll be interesting to see what comes up with tarot, because as I say, we're not really seeing cups energy here. It may even be that for some people who've come here on a spiritual level, you've almost not thought much about love in the material world because your connection is with a higher order entity, like shaman, you know, with their guides and so forth. There could be that sort of energy around you. Certainly to the degree that you are interested in those sort of practices, you know, sort of magical practices, manifestation, it's all about respect. So for you, it's all about bringing this peace and this balance. You're just a natural negotiator, a natural peacemaker. That's what you manifest in the world. You're not that interested in becoming rich. You may, as a byproduct, become rich, but it's not what the goal is. And for you, the information that you're receiving at that kind of bodily level and at that kind of thought and sight level is about giving you certainty and focus. It's about helping you know how to navigate what you want to do in the material world and what you want to bring in terms of peace. You may be interested in phrenology. So that was a particular thing that said certain personality characteristics are shown by the bumps on the head. I think for most, it's probably more that psychology interests you. That part of what you do with your clairvoyance and this sort of clairsentience as well is understand the psychology. It's why I very strongly get this sense of reading a room. And with the arrow, as I say, with focus, it's just how you use this energy. It's very important to you to use it in the appropriate way. Okay, so now we're going to use the tarot, and we're going to look firstly about a little bit more of a deeper profile in your psychic and spiritual gifts, looking particularly at the suits that we see and the balance of major and minor arcana. Then we're going to ask for Spirit's advice about how to to either build these, if this is really where you want to focus, or to build the areas that you're not doing if you want to develop those muscles in a sense. So think of it like a spiritual training program. This is what the whole purpose of this reading is. So firstly, a little bit more about you. Okay, so this is telling me that it's definitely picking up again with the sort of pentacles, this sort of sense of feeling things in the body. That, as I say, I think is the first way that you feel things. Your gut instinct is off the charts, really, really accurate. And certainly Spirit is saying that is meant to have a material output. You're not meant to just have this behind the scenes, because we have a court card here. Though you're a little bit, you question sometimes about, I think it's about telling people this is how you do it. I think it's more that it is that going to be accepted in the environment that you're in and so forth. So there's definitely a sense around thinking more and more about how to make this materially good for you, and about how, I think it's saying that, you could do a business as a meditation teacher, as a peacemaker, as a negotiator, anything along those lines definitely is there. But you aren't really thinking at the moment, this is what Spirit's saying, about taking it out into the world or showing yourself too much, with the Sun reversed. So, and the King of Swords again, so another court card, which to me is more sort of taking it out into the world. There's a sort of sense of repressing your own abilities and your own brilliance, not showing it too much to the world. In fact, it gives me the sense some people who work in negotiation and so forth will tell you that the best negotiators, you don't know even that they're doing it. Like, the best thing is the result where both parties walk from the room and think they've won. There's that sort of win-win, but it's sort of like so that people don't even understand that it's fully win-win, because of human egos are such that we like to win. So there's something like that with you, and it may be that Spirit is saying to some degree you are actually suppressing some of your own talents in this, and certainly potentially your talent for empathy. And that may be because you've been hurt. With the Five of Cups there, it feels as though you may have been hurt or disappointed on emotional levels, and so you kind of step away from it. It's sort of like you're more about the spiritual connections and spiritual love rather than love in the material world. So you definitely have the ability for empathy, and that's part of the reason why you can read a room, but it's like that you don't trust that as much. You don't trust anything that hits you in the feelings, like in terms of emotions. You trust it much more if you feel it in your body, or you have that sense, just that sense of a room or an environment that you're in, certainly. This is also telling me, because we have two court cards and the Sun, to me, the court cards and the major arcana here are telling me that you are very well developed in what you do. This isn't new to you. So you underestimate it, and you really only give it its full worth in a way when you're thinking about something in a business perspective, or something that's very material, but you are more developed than you possibly think, and that's why you don't have to be so equivocal about it, and you can reconnect to your heart in some way with this. The other thing that interests me is that the choice of these decks were very much around, each of them is meant to pick up a particular type of spiritual psychic gift energy. So the fact that you came to this reading, to me, has a very strong interdimensional feeling, a very strong sort of astral travel, move between the dimensions and so forth. And I think this is your sort of clairvoyance, clairsentience, and then you bring this energy into the earth. It's like this could be starseed energy, but it's very much grounded. So I think there's that as well too. There's some sort of connection, and as I say, a connection to a higher self that is very, very evolved. Okay, so let's ask for Spirit's advice about how to increase your abilities, or to balance out and bring in the empathy more on an emotional level, make you more comfortable with that, if that's what you want to do. So firstly, Spirit definitely wants you to do more in the world. Maybe it is because of the peacekeeping abilities that you bring and the grounding that you bring. because we have 3 major arcana there. So it's definitely saying that, and it is saying that kind of manifestation sort of things, it's saying it is there, that you are not just a receiver, that there's something about your capacity to ground that actually also could manifest, that could, and it doesn't necessarily mean you have to go and study ritual magic or do anything like that, law of attraction. That's completely up to you as to whether or not you're interested in it. But it's definitely saying bring it out there. And I think that meditation teacher at the beginning was about the concept that you could teach others. And it does say bringing justice and so forth to others, bringing things into balance, and understanding how much you are brilliant at that, and how developed you are with that. Not underestimating yourself. With the star reversed, you don't see how amazing you are in this space, and Spirit wants you to start to see how amazing you are. There is something to heal around the heart. The twins in this deck is the Lovers. So we have it reversed, and we have it with the 5 of Cups reversed. So I think Spirit is asking you to consider, if you are sort of shamanic and you are somebody who connects more on that level, that's fine. But are you denying yourself love and empathy and caring in this life? Are you separating yourself out? To some degree, again, the great negotiators are often a bit separate from the parties that they're dealing with. So I think there's just a gentle question here about whether or not, for your broader psychic and spiritual gifts, and also for your happiness, and to give you more energy to be able to keep on keeping on with the 9 of Wands there, maybe think about whether you can connect with some other people from a heart-centered perspective, and also potentially creatively. But it's almost like you'll see those people as part of what you do around your peacekeeping, as I say. But it will help you continue. You have chosen in this life a difficult path, in as much as the psychic and spiritual gifts you have will help others a lot in areas of conflict and contention. So I think Spirit is just sort of nudging you towards getting the support that you would get from that more empathic sort of opening on that level. Okay, so let's see what other advice Spirit can give you. So firstly, we're going to look at astrology, and then we're going to have a look at chakras before we close out with a couple of more mystical decks for final messages for you. So it's astrology energy that can help you with developing your psychic and spiritual gifts. Gemini, that's interesting, the twins. I mean, that's not specifically, but there is that connection there. We have the waning crescent moon and fire. Okay. So certainly with Gemini, communication, talking, taking your message out, that's very important. A little bit of humour, a bit of lightheartedness sometimes. You may find yourself in very heavy environments a lot with these sort of abilities. So having a bit of fun doesn't go astray. And certainly it does tilt, as I say, towards the Lovers there, because the tarot card is the Lovers for Gemini. So I think it is suggesting there is a key there. There is something to release and let go of, and let the universe look after it with the waning crescent moon. So it's almost as though just allowing that release of that energy may start to bring the energy in that you want. Let the universe help you, I think, is the message here. And connect also with your creativity. There's something, because you're so visual, there's a creative aspect to what you do, and visualization, and being able, you would be someone who could manifest through visualization, but you just have to believe in it a bit. You also could have Aries, Leo or Sagittarius strong in your chart, and certainly I think if you do, part of the message here is about being a little bit more open about what you do and about your brilliance, and not being so self-effacing about it, as I think you are. Okay, let's see what chakra energy needs to be sort of balanced, unblocked, supported for your spiritual gifts and psychic gifts, pile 3. The throat chakra, so yes, getting out and talking about things. Oh, I've got the throat chakra twice. That came up in another reading, so maybe there's people who've come to more than one reading. So in this case, we have the throat chakra with Celestite, we have divinity and wisdom. I am wise beyond my years, and I see divinity in all things. That definitely came up in one of the others. So you have all of these things. That's why you're so good at bringing it in and being able to communicate it to people. And then we have aquamarine, which is about sensitivity and closure. I create my own closure, and I honor my sensitivity. So allow whatever that healing is. And as I say, I think many of you might have gone to 2, because there's a very strong correlation between 2 there, even though they've shuffled the cards a lot. Okay, so Lastly, we're going to take a card from the Mystical Journey deck for some mystical advice for you, and then from the Secret Language of Light, so that we can look at light energy to close out the reading for you, pile 3. Energy shift. Okay, it's very interesting, isn't it, that this sort of feels very physical as well. Your body is so finely attuned to the energies around, and then, as I say, it translates into the clairvoyance and into claircognizance and that sort of thing. But you pick up energy and allow that energy in and trust that energy. Trust this ability that you have far more than you possibly have been doing. Okay, and let's get a light message for you to close out the reading, pile 3. Light beings. So this is you connecting to the higher realms and bringing stuff in and grounding it with all that earth. But, again, trust it. I think that a lot of the people who've come here probably don't think you're very psychic. You just probably think you're very good in the material world and very good psychologically. But this is telling you that you are much more of an antenna than you think, and that you're connecting to much higher entities and orders in the universe than you think. And that's also partly, as I say, why I think that you picked this particular tarot deck. You are maybe a starseed or something in that sort of variety, the earth angel, that kind of energy. You're definitely connecting with that, so don't doubt that. Okay, so pile 3, I hope that resonates for you. I hope you enjoyed the reading. If so, please like the video and subscribe if you haven't already done so. And if you care to share in the comments, love to hear about it. Otherwise, I hope to see you in future readings. Welcome, pile 4, to your reading. So these first cards were under the tarot card that drew you here. We have a few other oracle cards we'll look at before we get to the tarot deck that you chose for this reading. But this is firstly to give me a sense about whether or not you are primarily a kind of receiver channel, or whether you are someone who projects and creates and manifests, and then some energy around how that manifests in your psychic and spiritual gifts. And the way that I'm using the Dreams of Gaia Tarot to ask that particular question is that I'm looking at court cards and major arcana cards as being about the projecting out energy, and minor arcana cards being more the receiver. So you have a court card and a major arcana card here. So you are very much someone who projects energy out into the world. You are able to manifest. You'd be extremely good at the law of attraction type of work. Potentially ritual high magic if you chose to do that. You don't have to. But you are very much someone, and you are the energy that people will pick up. You are likely to be highly charismatic. You are likely to be entrancing almost. People are drawn to you because of the amount of energy that you give off. So that you out of all the readings, pick that up most strongly. And I think it's interesting that we have yoga instructor and then we have healing here. I think that the way that most of your manifestation operates is around being a natural healer, being someone who, whether it's emotionally or physically, able to manifest outcomes and heal people and connect to their emotions and to their mind. With the water sign, they're very highly empathic, but you can understand it partly because the receiving end is very much in the kind of clairsentience sort of end of things, that are knowing and understanding. So there's a wisdom that you bring in, I think, probably from past lives, a clear channel of knowing and the structure and the understanding and being able to see the solution, and particularly how to manifest that through empathy and through physical manifestation. Some of the things that help this along, as I say, yoga instructor, I hear you, some of you may be a yoga instructor, but I think primarily that's just picking up that kind of sense of in the body and the physical and the healing. So you're a natural healer. Or a reader, I think, is picking up the kind of emotional connection, the feeling. So all the kind of clear senses that are about feeling and empathy and so forth, but also clairvoyance, clear seeing, which is a bit of a combination of the two of these. With aura reader, you probably can see auras. If you haven't tried to do that, then learn how to do it, because you will be able to do it and you'll be able to pick up the energy, and it may very much help with healing work if that's what you're doing. You're also, though, very connected to the interdimensional realms, and I'll get to why that's interesting with the tarot deck a little bit later, but with Portal Keeper you can move between the realms. So I do feel with this sort of sense here that you've probably done a lot in the sort of space of manifestation and interdimensional connection, astral travel and so forth in other lives, if not in this one. So you are very much projecting that energy out. You're very much a force to be reckoned with, but you do receive as well around the sort of sense of empathy and clear seeing, and clairvoyance. Okay, so what we also had under here were some cards. Two are around what I think is your dominant sort of area at the moment, which is around that kind of external projection, manifestation, magic sort of area, and two are around more the receiving, divination side of things. So we have influence, yeah, that doesn't surprise me, and divination. So interesting, and it's interesting that divination is something it's saying here. So this is the balance, because you are getting divinatory input. You are well balanced in many ways, but it is primarily sort of pushing that energy out. You're meant to be seen in the world and influence people. You have strong influence. Now, there is always a thing with a card like this that says when you have that sort of ability and you're projecting out, that it is important to make sure that you have very clear channel, that you are very, very connected to your heart. I like the fact that we have emotion and intellect there, that we have the empathic, so that it doesn't become manipulative. So there is always a risk with that kind of ability to manipulate without even knowing that you're doing it sometimes. But divination, I think, here means that you have a good channel to know the consequences of what you're doing and to bring that into balance. So on divination, we have dreams and coins. Okay, so firstly, much of what you do, this portal keeping, you probably astral travel, you probably lucid dream. There's stuff about your dreams, the images and symbols that come. A lot is downloaded to you that way. It's also, I think, a way where you rest and recharge your batteries, because a lot of your energy pushes outwards. So you need to rest and recharge your batteries, but it's also a way where you get more information. This is definitely saying, because you are somebody who manifests, that you will bring abundance and possibly money. You're likely to be able to make money out of these sort of abilities if you aren't already doing it. It's also around divination. You can use, coin tosses and so forth, or the I Ching, can be done with coins as opposed to yarrow sticks and that kind of thing. So you may well be able to use different sorts of divination to bring you information and clarity and to make sure that you're balancing your influence in a positive way. Okay, so let's have a look at what tarot has to tell you. So firstly, we're going to be looking at a little bit more detail about your spiritual and psychic gifts and what is working, what could potentially be brought more to the fore, that kind of balance. And then we'll have a look at Spirit's advice about how to do that. So okay, so firstly, what's interesting about this? Well, firstly, I want to go back to the portal keeper before anything else. There was an intent around the choice of the decks here. And to me, they represent certain types of sort of spiritual or psychic energy. This deck, Tarot Bot, to me has a sort of feeling of kind of the clairsentience, the telepathy, the singularity of merging man and machine, the sort of sense of the higher order intelligence that comes in, the connection to the divine, all of that kind of thing, plus also potentially interdimensional as well. So I definitely think you were drawn to this because there is a kind of a brilliance about you and a creative brilliance that comes through that sort of sense of almost reading the matrix. It's like you read and understand the matrix. This is why you can heal. This is why you can manifest. You've kind of cracked the code to some degree. And that fits with the original cards, and it also fits with your intuitive choice of this deck. Now, in terms of where you're at with this, there is a reasonable amount of progression with what you've done, but I think that you have much more that you can do. Because if we had a lot of major arcana and court cards here, we only have one court card, I would say you're very, very well progressed in whatever you are doing. But because we have the Queen of Cups and it's the only one in that space, I feel as though you're just at the beginning of what you could develop and manifest with this, and you could really ramp this up and connect even more and more in. And part of that is going to be about healing people in situations of conflict. Like there's something about doing that turbocharges and brings you the recognition of what you do. There is a sense here that although you do have the empathy, you may suppress it to some degree. You may be more about healing rather than the feeling around it. So if you were a doctor, for instance, then you would be very, very good at all the sort of chemistry and so forth around it. But the bedside manner, you might be going, well, look, you know what? I'm just going to tell you how it is. So there is, Spirit is sort of gently sort of saying here that connecting to the empathy a bit more, you do have it, but you maybe suppress it a bit, would be helpful. Maybe you don't, because part of what's happening here is that you've had to deal with people, and this is maybe why influence came up, that have not been honest with you, or who have had these sorts of abilities. Maybe you've been around people like that and you found out that they were just not what they were saying they were. Worst case scenario, you sort of been around, some sort of a faith healer who turned out to be a fraud, for instance. So there may be something there where you're doubting it a little bit about your ability because you've seen maybe people using it and not being true to it, or not using it in the right way. So Spirit is saying there's sort of something in that space. The empathy is there and it's very well developed, but it's a little bit suppressed. And there is partly because of a disappointment, but it's also in that disappointment and in the sort of conflict that's been around you that your victory comes. And there is a degree, and I think this is picking up the aura, this is picking up colour, this is picking up creativity. So there is a side of you, and it's not sort of shown in these first three cards, but it is kind of the key to the kingdom, which is about connecting to the creative instinct that you have and taking yourself out into the world and trusting that you can do something in the world with this. That's the issue about developing it. It's all sort of there, but you haven't really flexed your muscle, so to speak, out in the world. So let's ask Spirit for what advice they can give you in developing, I think, that kind of really the aura sort of creative side, and unlocking a little bit more of the empathy that is there, but you're keeping on under rather strict regulation at the moment, Pile 4. So you're all about the fives here. You've got 5 of Swords, 5 of Cups, 5 of Wands. Spirit is definitely saying there's some conflict you have, either about your abilities or about how you use them or about how you've seen them used. There's something like that. And certainly by processing that information, and again, finding the creative way out of it to go from the 5 to the 6, there's something in that. I do think that, as I say, because you project so much out, you are bringing information in, but I don't think you trust the information in as much as you trust your capacity to heal and to project out and to give energy out. So that inner conflict that you have, going through it through a creative energy sort of level, and I'm getting take time out, like as I say, because you give a lot of energy out, that could help. But it is somewhere in the core of whatever this conflict, whether it's internal or external, is the answer to developing this more. Because at the moment you exhaust yourself, Spirit is saying. You need to come out of a cycle where you're giving out so much energy and not feeling like you're getting it back. The more that you open up your heart, the more you can actually let emotional energy come in and help to replenish you. It looks as though you felt your heart will take something away from you, but in actual fact it will help to replenish energy for you, and that will help you decide what you really want to do. Because it looks as though, so I'm saying, it feels like you've got all these abilities but you haven't worked out what you want to do with it yet. So that helps you then have a material outcome with it, but you need to think about how you use your energy. We have 2 6s here, so peace of mind about what you're doing, and I think it's like not feeling that you're going to use it in the wrong way. I do think many of you have seen this used in the wrong way. So I think understanding that the very fact that you question that you want to be sure about that, means that you won't. That peace of mind and having a direction will help lead you to that sort of creative outcome. But again, with the 9 of Cups reversed, there is some emotional disappointment that needs to be released. You can't walk away from this, Spirit is saying. You can't just sort of go, I'm just not going to be about that, because it drains a lot of energy from you, and it means that you're not getting the energy coming through to you. You're kind of blocking some of the channel to some degree and just always pushing out. And there was at least one reading in this, I think it was maybe the first reading, where I felt like there was so much coming in that it clogged the air. It's sort of like the channel, and you had to open it and send it out into the world. You're kind of the opposite. It's like you're sending so much out that you're depleting the battery. So this is about getting that into balance. Okay, so let's look at some advice for you. So firstly, let's have a look at some astrological advice to help you recalibrate, because that's really what this is about, and to trust yourself more, trust your motives, because your motives are fine. I just think you've seen people who aren't as ethical as you. Sagittarius, 8th house, okay, Cardinal. So 8th house to me is telling me an additional thing about your psychic gifts. I think that you're probably a medium, whether you realize it or not, and that's, I think, some of the input you're getting is from sort of like spirits that have passed over and so forth. So don't ignore that. It also tells me that you can go to the depths and really understand what's going on. That's why you've got the key to the matrix, so to speak. So there's a lot of depth there. Sagittarius is about all this sort of like, it's an energy thing, and it's about a freedom, setting yourself free, not holding yourself under quite a strict regulation as you do. And its tarot card is Temperance, so it brings it into balance. You're just a little bit out of balance. Not a lot, I don't think, but just a little bit. And it's through seeing or dealing with conflict externally that you start to see your own internal conflict, and you'll find the freedom and the philosophical approach to move forward with. Then you can be more initiating what you need to do. Cardinal signs, Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn, all initiate, all start to bring things into being. And that is your core thing, because you send energy out. You're meant to initiate, heal, change the environment, not just receive it and understand it, but do something very active in the world. Okay, so let's have a look at what chakra energy is either blocked or is working really well, depending upon what we get. What advice around chakra energy for you Spirit has. So solar plexus and crown chakra. So yeah, this is you. You are a receiver. You definitely are a receiver. It's just that you need to kind of allow that to also be emotional, I think. But we'll get to the crown chakra in a minute, because solar plexus chakra first. This is about the 6 of Wands. You are meant to be successful. This is part of your life path. This is something that you are meant to be able to use and bring into being. With yellow fluorite, which is about harmony and optimism, the affirmations are, I choose to have an optimistic outlook, and I am in harmony with nature. You are very in harmony with nature. You're a natural healer. But I think something happened that made you doubt that, or doubt this whole area, sort of spiritual and psychic things. And so it's remembering again that you can be optimistic and you can be true to yourself. The crown chakra, as I say, connects you with the higher realms. With moonstone, we have travel and astuteness. And the affirmations are, I choose to work astutely, and I travel astrally in my dreams. And yes, you definitely do. We saw that right at the beginning. There's something, some of your claircognizance, clairsentience, clairvoyance potentially with some of the sort of wands energy here is around astral travel, interdimensional kind of travel, and that also fits with the tarot deck that you chose. Okay, so to close out pile 4, we're going to firstly draw a card from the Mystical Journey deck for a mystical journey piece of advice for you, and then a card from the Secret Language of Light for a light energy to close the reading. Okay, we've got Sanctuary. Yeah, there's some healing. Actually, I think what this is saying is there's some healing you need to do for yourself. You project that healing energy out, but you do need to work out what this thing was. What was this conflict? What was and I think for many of you, it was around your ethics and so forth, and you were a bit dismayed by a lack of it around you, whether that was in the spiritual community or whether it was in a work situation or friendship or a relationship, whatever it is. Spirit is saying that you can have a sanctuary. You can go within on that level. That's fine. You don't have to send all your energy out all the time. Give yourself that time out. Okay, and last but not least, let's get a light energy for you, pile 4. Because it looks to me like you need it. It looks to me like you have actually been through quite a bit. You're very sort of other person centered and that in itself can be quite draining sometimes. So let's see what a light energy is for you. Nourish. Yeah, that's what you need to do. You do need to heal yourself as well. You do need to replenish your batteries. It's been coming through over and over, because although what's coming into you at the moment, because you're kind of blocking the emotional nourishment you could get, is just the thoughts and the sort of like, you know, what you see and so forth, and how that can then be something you send out for others. But you do need to also nourish yourself and connect to yourself and ground yourself, because you're grounding other people. But with the earth there, it's like, I feel like you're this star up above there. You're grounding everybody else, but you need to be able to ground yourself. So Pile 4, I hope that that resonates for you. I hope you enjoyed the reading. If so, please like the video and subscribe. And if you care to share about it in the comments, I'd be really interested to hear. Otherwise, I hope to see you in future readings.